Hi everyone. Today I want to go over the basics of getting started with Microsoft Teams. So I'm going to show you all of the basics and walk you through each element of Teams and for you to set up your classes. This video is focused for teachers wanting to get started with Microsoft Teams. So first, you may visit office.com to access your Office 365 subscription. And in there, one of the apps that you should have available is Teams. Now, when you open up Microsoft Teams, this is the web app. This is what you can access in the web browser. And this is a great way to access Microsoft Teams if you're on a Chromebook, if you only have access to a web browser, any other way, anywhere where you have internet, you can access Teams through this method. Now, if you're on a Windows or a Mac computer, there's also an app that you can use, and that's what I'm going to use for the remainder of this video. And the app has some additional features, and if you are on a computer that has that available, a Windows or a Mac computer, I suggest that you use the app. Some of the things that it has, in addition to the web browsers, the web version only supports showing you one video during a video meeting, where this app allows you to have that nice larger grid view and some of the other little bells and whistles involved with that. So you want to use this app if you have the ability to. If you're on a Chromebook, there are ways for you to install the Android app for Teams. I do not recommend that. I recommend you use the web browser version that I just showed you that you have access to at office.com. The Android app and the iOS app for iPads, iPhone, and then Android phones, that's really meant for quick on-the-go, quick communications and access with Teams. It's not really meant to be the full implementation for students to sit down, complete assignments, etc. Now, when you open up Teams and you're in the desktop app, the first thing I'm going to suggest you do is you can go over and click on your name once you log into it, and check out some of the settings we have available. So I'm going to go over that before we actually create a team. And so, for instance, you may have wondered why I have a dark theme set up, and that's because that is one of the options. So you have the default theme, which most of you probably have seen, but you can use this dark theme that you may have seen in my videos and that you just saw. And they also have high contrast for individuals that may need that. Also, you can notice that my different teams show up in a grid, and that is the default. But they also have a list view that you can use, where you can view a team and then have a list of all your teams on the left. This is actually a quicker navigation, and I usually have used this one, but I just recently switched to the grid view, and I'm getting used to that. This is also a number of people ask about not wanting Teams to automatically start up when they first turn on their computer. Inside of the settings is where you can uncheck that or turn that off if you like. So auto start application, open application in the background, on close, keep the application running. So this, when you click the X button, it still's running in the background for you to get notifications if someone sends you a chat message, etc. And some other things you could look at. For instance, the new meeting experience that's out with the new larger grid view and the together mode, and those things are available if you click on this, opening the meeting in a separate window, etc. And so you can turn on some of these other things, spell check. There are some privacy settings you can look at, how you want notifications to show up on your computer with this Teams application, your default preferences for the devices, your microphone and camera. If you have multiple of these hooked up and you're constantly starting meetings and have to change it, go here and set what you'd like to be the default. Permissions of what this app has access to on your device. Some people have issues with external links. It's most likely because they need to go to settings and turn this external links on. And then the calls, this is where you can set up your voicemail, and etc. If someone calls you on Teams and you don't answer, so you can go there. So check out those settings, go through it, and get familiar with some of them so you have experience with it and you can set them to your preference. The next thing is you want to actually create a team. If for whatever reason you're not clicked on this Teams section over here on the left, you want to click on that. And then you should be able to click this button where it says Join or Create Team. Once you do that, if you're looking to join a team, you can put in the code here to join that team, or you can create a team. There are different types of teams that you can create if you have an education account. Most likely, you're going to want to create a class. That'd be something for you and your students to interact with, where you can distribute assignments, assign projects, and have discussions. But you can also set up a professional learning community. Your school can set up one for all of the staff. And then if you just want to set up more of a generic team that's set up in a similar way to how it is in just if someone normally used Teams, not with the education setup, you can just select this other category and it will just set you up as a default team. So I'm going to select the class. The first thing you want to do is you want to give your class a name. You may want to identify the period you teach, etc. My recommendation is, as a number of people have asked this, is that for each period you teach, you're going to want to create a separate team because you want to be able to assign assignments with different due dates for each of those different sections that you teach. For elementary school teachers, you probably want only one team for your entire, all of the students you have, your class. And then you want to organize your content in other ways depending on the subjects you're teaching: maths, science, reading, writing, etc. Now, the specials teachers for elementary school and then even middle school, you may want to think of different ways for them to interact with it. Possibly they're just added to your team and they have a section for art class, physical education, etc., or they can have their own teams set up. So those are things to think through, and whatever works at your school, those are options you have. So then you can click Next, and it's going to start to create the team for you. And so you can start to add students and you can add additional teachers on the screen. I'll also show you where you can do this if you've already created a team, where you can do it after that point. So I'm going to add one student just so we have it in the team. This is an example account I typically use. So we've added this example one. And once you click, make sure you click Add. Some people continue to add them here without clicking this, and it doesn't actually add them. Once you click Add, it actually adds the student. It's going to create that team for you. And the first thing I tell people to do after they've created the team is to click on these three dots right here and to select Manage Team. These are the settings where we can access the settings for this particular team, and we can set the preferences for how we want this to be for your class or your team, etc. In here, you'll notice that we can see the teachers, which are designated as owners. And then members of the team are all the students that you add. If a student joins the team without using their school account that's tied to the same domain, they'll show up as a guest. And you don't want that, so you want them to sign in with their account. I actually add each of my students, and I know a number of school districts actually add the students for the teachers, so you may not need to set those things up. But I continue to add students myself for them to have access to the team. I don't give them the join code, and that's what I would recommend. If you need to add students after you've created the team, you simply go to this area. Again, I clicked on Manage Team, and you can add new members in the same way that I did when I first created the team. Next, you may want to go over to channels. Channels are a way for you to organize some of the different areas where students can collaborate, see files, have discussions, etc. I'm going to talk more about that in a minute, but just know that you can add channels from this location. Here are some of the other settings. One of the things I like to do first is go over and change the theme, and that edits the little picture icon that we can have here. And you can also do it from whenever you just hover over. You can click this little pencil and you can select an icon that you want. You can also upload a custom icon. For instance, that's what I do for my different classes, or you can select from the gallery that they have here, and they have some nice images, but some of them may not meet your needs for differentiating between your different types of different classes, since you probably teach all the same subject. But you can go ahead and select any of these that you'd like. The other things we have are permissions. And so you can go through here, and this helps you allow and not allow certain permissions with members, which are the students, as well as owners. So owners can delete all messages, give members the option to delete their messages, give members the option to edit their messages, so you can have all these things. Allow members to delete and restore channels. Notice that's turned off. You probably don't want students to do that. Allow members to add and remove apps. We don't want students to do that either. Allow members to upload custom apps. Allow members to create and update and remove tabs. So notice these are turned off by default because we don't want students to do that. If for whatever reason you do, you can turn them on. Notice guest permissions. Mine are turned off by my organization by default. So my organization doesn't even allow guests to enter. I just noticed a number of people have guests in their account as students, so you may want to turn this off so it doesn't allow that if you've had that issue. Who can @mention someone? Here's where you can generate that team code if you do want to invite people based off of that code. Enable stickers and memes. Allow memes to be uploaded. So if you want to turn those off, if you don't like that ability, you can turn that off there. You used to be able to manage some class notebook things quickly here. You don't no longer do that. You just use the tab. And then there's some tags here. So only team owners can create tags. And that's probably how you'd want. Once you add different apps, if you want to be able to add more apps and remove them, this is another space where you can do that. So one of the things that I want to talk about is channels. And to be completely honest, I typically only use the general channel. There's lots of talks about channels, and I think channels tend to confuse people when we put too much emphasis on them in teams. Really, it's not as important. The idea of channels was to create different spots for smaller subgroups of teams. So if I'm working in a business and I use Microsoft Teams for my business, it allows the smaller groups as part of our larger organization to organize themselves. For instance, I teach computer science and I have more of a software development background. So I may be managing a product, a software product, let's say Facebook. And even though Facebook is really a larger one, so it's not the perfect example. But anyways, think Facebook or Snapchat. And, Team Snapchat, we're designing the app. We may have different smaller groups that work on different elements, and I want to create channels for them so they can collaborate on their own. And me as a manager is going to have access to each of those channels, but other members don't need to have access to that. And it's just a space for those smaller groups to work collaboratively. That's what channels are for. And so similarly, that's what I use them for. I don't recommend anyone uses them for different subjects. Elementary school teachers, I could see you doing that. So that's one way you could organize it by subject there. But I don't, what I mean is actually modules and units. I don't recommend that you have each channel for each unit or modules have different channels, stuff like that. You just want to continue to use assignments, etc. And as the year goes through, just like you normally would, it continues to progress. What I do use channels for is, as of right now, we don't have full breakout rooms and meetings, so you can use channels for that. And I used it for collaborative work projects, where students need access to be able to easily talk to each other, and I can view that information and share files, etc. So when you go over to create, new channels and you want to add new channels, I suggest it's just for breakout sessions or group work for students. So you can set them up to be private channels where you can designate which students work in there. So you can set up the breakout rooms ahead of time before your meeting. That is what I do. So I either randomize it or, certain students work together typically. I set up group A, B, C, D, E, whatever, how many you need. And then I tell them after we meet together, all right, go to your different groups. They would only see the channels that I've assigned them, so they would know what group they were in very easily. And of course, I can move them around to the different channels also. And same thing for group work. Sometimes I set them up with just the students' names as the name of the channel, and they go there and they work on it. And once that project's over, I delete those channels to keep our team nice and clean. So that's one thing you can do with the channels. And again, I don't overuse the channels really. Now, when you look at your tabs inside of a team, you have posts. This is just a constant feed of every time you add students, as you can see right here. You post assignments. Any communications you want to make with students, you're going to put them here. This is the default tab that everyone sees as soon as they open it up. When you click down here, one of the things that some people don't realize is you can click on this format button to get this richer text area where you can bold, underline, italicize, and make things look nicer for announcements you want to make. There is an important thing, so I do this a lot for when, if I leave sub-plans, I'll say important, I am absent today, and I give them instructions, and so then they see that there, and it is a nice important tag. You can also set them up to be announcements instead of a conversation. So that's something you may want to do. Announcements have this larger header where you can upload custom images. A lot of people do a little Bitmoji thing for their different announcements. So that's something you may want to create for your announcements. You can select who can reply to these announcements or conversations and other things. In the posts area, you can also attach files. You can add emojis, stickers. You can add stream videos. You can praise. You can add forms and any of the other apps that you may find and want to be able to add that allows you to quickly add things. For instance, my school also uses Zoom, and you can add a Zoom extension here, so you can quickly add a Zoom meeting to your posts area for students to jump on and use that. Now, there's also a lot of confusion around the file section I hear from a lot of teachers. And so what this file section is for is files you want to collaborate with your class on. Files that are uploaded here, everyone in the team will have access to. It depends if you give them read access only or write access. But remember that the same file, each student will be able to edit. So if you give write access to a Word document or a PowerPoint in this file section, every student is editing the same file, the same copy. They don't each get their own copy, they edit the same one. And that's what this area is for, is collaborating on files. I only use this for two things: uploading resources that I want all the students to have access to that aren't related to a particular assignment. For instance, a PDF of my syllabus, any readings that they may need access to over multiple assignments, anything like that. You can upload the PDF or the document for that and set it so that they only read it. If it's a PDF, they're only going to be able to read it. So you can create new assignments. You can create folders to organize the content on here if you're uploading a lot of stuff. This is where you can upload your files or folders, and you can do all those things here. The other thing I do is I upload, if I want a collaborative document, let's say it's usually a Word document I do this on, or an Excel spreadsheet, depending on what I'm doing, where I want all the students to have access and to be able to put things in, then you would create a document here and they can go to the Files tab and everybody can edit it at the same time. You see a lot of people do this with Google Docs, and this is how you can do this with Office 365, Word, Excel, PowerPoint documents. But again, only put this here if you want everybody to have access to it. Now, I'm not going to go into detail about the class notebook because I have another video, so check out my video on class notebook. But the notebook, class notebook's essentially a spot where you can give students their own notebook space in OneNote to take notes. You can also distribute assignments to that particular notebook for them to complete, etc. And so, again, check out my video for a more detailed explanation of how to set this up and how it works. But you can click this button and essentially set up your notebook for your particular team, and it will automatically distribute the notebook to each student in your team when you set it up this way. You also have the Assignments tab. And the Assignments tab is where you want to create all of your assignments, anything you want the students to complete and turn into you. as well as any quizzes, tests, etc. Anything you want to grade with a rubric or you want to have due dates, this is where you want to put it. I encourage people to use the assignments tab more than what I see people doing. People are almost avoiding the assignments tab. Use it. Anything you want to distribute to students, this is where you should really mainly be doing it. And so when you click the Create button in the Assignments tab, you have an assignment or a quiz. If you've created an assignment in another team, you can select from existing and it will copy that assignment. So if you have multiple sections of something, you can create it in one team and then you can just use this from existing to copy it from that team into this other class. And I do that a lot for my multiple sections of the same course. And you can adjust the due dates then if they're different in the different courses. So a quiz, I'm just going to show that first because it's easier. A quiz opens up Microsoft Forms. So if you create quizzes and tests in Microsoft Forms, this is a way for you to easily add them and assign them to your classes. All of them will show up and you can search for a particular one. So I suggest you name them things that allow you to easily find them. And you can just select it and it will create it there. And then you can set the due date. You can set a closing date, which won't let them complete the test after a certain day and time. So I do that so that at the end of the period, the quiz closes and students cannot complete it on their own time. And I have it open as soon as, or I'm sorry, post, because you can schedule it to post. I'll show that in assignments. It's the same. You can schedule it to post. I do that at the beginning of the class period. So it opens as soon as the period starts and closes as soon as the period ends, so that students have to complete it within that set amount of time that I want. We can do the same thing for their assignments, so I'm going to show you that. Assignments isn't as straightforward as quizzes, but it's still very easy to use. And so for assignments, you'll get this view. You're going to give the assignment a title. Now what I like to do is I have a numbering scheme. So if it's unit 1, I say 1 point, and if it's the first assignment of that unit, I say 1. This keeps everything very organized. You may have some other scheme that you use. Maybe it's just a name for the assignments. That's completely okay also. You can add tags. Some things that I don't really use the tags, to be honest with you, but where I've seen people use the tags very usefully is they actually, instead of having a naming scheme like I have, is they have a tag for the unit. So they would say unit 1, and it would have a tag for that. And that's another way you can organize things. And then you can type some instructions for the students. And the most important thing here is add a resource. And this is what you have, the quizzes doesn't have this. It automatically has the quiz be the resource. But the resource is any of the documents you want them to have access to. This may even be external links to websites. Maybe they have to complete the assignment on an external website, not in Teams. You can add that link here, and students can click on it to complete that task. Most of the time, you're probably going to have a Word, Excel, PowerPoint file. And so you can either upload them from your OneDrive, or you can upload them from your actual device, your computer. And so once you do that, I'm just going to select this document here. You can click Attach, and it attaches it to this assignment. Now, when you first attach something, it's going to say students cannot edit. It just allows them to view this document as a resource. Anything you want, like I said before, readings, things that they shouldn't edit, other additional instructions, maybe a rubric, you're going to want to keep it that they can't edit it. If you want the student to be able to complete this document, fill it in, type on it, etc., you want to select, so you click the 3 dots at the end here, and you need to say students edit their own copy. And this is really important, and most people miss this step. And so you can do that. Now, another thing you can do is if you just want them to have a blank Word document or a blank Excel spreadsheet or whatever it is, a blank PowerPoint because they're creating a presentation, you don't need to give them any starting, piece of the document. You can just say new file, and you can select and it just assigns a blank PowerPoint, Word, Excel, or OneNote page. So you can also do that. And again, you have to do the same thing though. Students edit their own copy or however you want it to be. Now, another thing you can do, if it's just something very basic you need to add to a file, you can actually edit the file that's distributed to students right from inside of Teams. So I can click on this PowerPoint, and maybe I want to give them a title to start off with, and then each student will have what I've typed in this. So if you want to give them a starter thing, you don't want to pre-create it on your computer or on your OneDrive, for whatever reason, you can just edit what you're assigning to them. So if I click close, now it will have what I have just added. So you can edit your resources right within the assignment. Another thing is if you've created a class notebook page and you want to distribute it to your students as part of this assignment, you can do that. And this is the way I suggest for you to use Class Notebook, is you use the Assignments tab to actually distribute the pages and assign them work. Next, you can assign how many points you want it to be. Most of you will probably do 100 out of 100 points. If you have some other point scheme, though, you like to use, of course, you can put that in there, so any number of points you want. Something a lot of people don't know about is the rubrics, and so I use this on assignments. And you can create different rubrics, and they'll be in here for you to use across all of your teams. So you can go through and you can design different rubrics. And you can add your different categories, and you can turn off for it to be weighted by points or not worth points. So you can do that. You can add as many columns as you want, as many rows as you want, and you can identify the percentage of each row. You can make it so it just evenly distributes the weights, or if you want certain rows to weigh more, you can do that also. So it's actually, I'm not saying it's the greatest rubric system ever created, but it's pretty powerful. And you can do most of what you'll probably want to do with rubrics. And I do use this. It makes grading a lot faster, as you can just click on the different rubric items, and it also gives students now feedback on their assignment. So all the power of using a rubric in our assessments Teams allows you to have. Now, you can also select the classes you want to assign this to. So even though before I said you can copy it over from another team, when you're creating an assignment, if you know you want to assign it to multiple teams, you can select those teams here and assign it to multiple teams. Now, I want you to be wary of doing this with OneNote notebook assignments. It doesn't work. You need to, if you're using the OneNote notebook, you need to assign it to each of those teams individually, because it needs to pull the page from within that notebook and distribute it to the students of that notebook. So just don't do it for OneNote assignments, but if you have Word, PowerPoint assignments, you can select your multiple teams and it will assign it to each of them. If you need to assign an assignment to just specific students, you can also do that here. And if you click edit right here, you have a couple other settings. Don't assign to students added to the class in the future. So for instance, if a week from now, a new student adds to my class, if I don't want them to have this assignment, that's what the default is. If you do want any new students to also get this assignment distributed to them, you need to select this as an option. Then you have due date and the time you want to do, so the date and the time. There are some additional settings here. So I can go through. I can schedule to assign in the future. I use this a lot. Like I said, I make it so it's scheduled to assign right at the beginning of the period. So you can check this off, and you can set that. Then you can set the due date, and then you can set the close date, so students won't be able to submit past this date. These are really powerful and helpful for managing, helping your students manage their time when they know it's due at a specific thing. It closes, you're not going to accept any submissions past a certain time, etc. They'll see that information. You have some other settings here. For instance, if you are using channels to organize your work, you can select the channel you want this assignment to post to. All right, so when it shows up in the post section. The assignments tab will still only be available in the general channel, but you can actually post to the, the stream, where most of your students will probably click to access your assignments just because it's the first thing they see. You can choose the channel. So if you are using this for units, or especially you elementary school teachers that are probably going to use channels to organize your content areas, you can make it so it posts to the particular channel you want it to. Now I will say that you can, if you're not ready to assign an assignment, you can click save, and it will go into this drafts area. So you have drafts, and you can go back and you can continue to edit that and use it later on. Finish it later on to assign. So you don't have to assign an assignment as soon as you work on it. You can save it as a draft. Any assignments you've assigned will show up in this section, and then any assignments you've graded all the students, will show up here. So this helps keep everything organized for you and is a really great addition they added. It wasn't always like this, that they added last year, really, and it's nice. So once you've graded all of the students' work in an assignment, it will show up in the graded section for you, and that's automatically collapsed, but you always have access to all the assignments in the team if you do need to go back in time for particular reasons. Once you grade assignments, and after you've created assignments, you'll get a gradebook grid here that, if you're a teacher, I'm sure you're very familiar with. Students' names show up at different rows. All the assignments show up as columns. And this is a quick, easy way for you to check grades for your entire roster. So this is another more recent addition last year to Microsoft Teams. So another really great thing. Now, in the post section, the other thing I wanted to point out was that you can create meetings instantly. And so when you're doing online meetings with your students, you may want to just use this and start a meeting immediately with them. So you can just click on this and it will start a meeting right in the general channel, or whatever channel you want to start a meeting in. This is how you want your students to start a meeting in their individual channels if you're having breakout rooms, or this is how you want to create the meetings for each of those breakout rooms. You can just click this meet button and it will start to meet now. You can also schedule a meeting for your particular team to show up in the channel, so a reoccurring meeting, in which will show up on the calendar right from this section here. So you can do that, and you can schedule a meeting, give it a title, set it how it reoccurs, etc., for this particular class, and you can give it a description, so daily meeting, etc. Now, another thing that you can do is you can add more tabs to the top here, and there's lots of useful things that you can do with this. There are tons of different apps that you can use with Teams, and you may want to take some time to go through and look at them. Now, one that I find very useful to add is websites, different websites that your students have access to. You can click on this and you can add a website as a tab. And they can open it and see it right inside of Teams, and they can also open it in a new tab if they select a certain button. This is also how you can display your Bitmoji classroom or some other different OneDrive files or Google Slides files, or anything that is just accessible through the internet, you can display with this tab. You can also display a SharePoint site. You can display a PDF files. If you display PowerPoint, Excel, Word files using these extensions, everyone can edit them similar to the Files tab. It actually allows you to create a tab for a file in your file section. So just be aware of that. Same thing with forms. It allows you students to have access to a form from within a tab. So just know that. Wakelet is another one I like to use to create a resource page for my students. So check out that if you don't know about it. Streams, you can just give access to a stream video. Nearpod, there's so many different things. So just check out all the things I have available. Some things you may recognize and want to use. Some you may need to research. But lots of different apps that you can use. Now over here on the sidebar navigation, there are of course other things. Now this relates to all your teams, not a specific team. One thing you may want to do is you notice the chat feature, and I use this a lot with my students. And so chat allows you to message students and other teachers to communicate with them. I encourage my students to do this during our live meetings. They go over the chat, they message me, because I don't allow them to actually use the chat within a meeting because they just can get annoying with it. So they message me privately through this. When they need extra help, they message me. And what I also like is if you bring up a person's name and you're speaking to someone specifically, you can call them to do a one-on-one video call or just a audio call right from within this chat area. You can collaborate on files with an individual, so you can open up and collaborate on a file just one-on-one with somebody. So, and you can even add tabs, just as we saw with a team, to an individual one-on-one conversation with someone. So this is how you can collaborate with an individual and not be part of a team. You can also create group chats in the same way, so you can add multiple people. And this is another way students can do teamwork or collaborative work. All you need to do to create a new chat is click on this icon here, and a lot of people miss this. But you can click on that, and then you just enter the people's names that you want to add to the chat, either in single individual or multiple people to start the chat. Again, you can send files, very similar to the post section where you have the format capability. You can attach files. You can set things to be important. You can add stream videos, stickers, emojis, all kinds of fun stuff, and whatever apps you add, you can do that from within here. So I really encourage you to not be afraid of the chat and try to use it with your students. It has, from the other teachers that use this with me, they have found it to be really powerful how a student can really get in touch with you in such an easy, collaborative way. And so if you have any office hours or anything, this is a way you can do one-on-one meetings with students. Of course, the Teams tab is just where you have access to your teams. You'll notice there is an assignments tab over here on the left. A lot of people ask me what this is, and it's just a way for you to click that and quickly get to the tab assignments of any of your classes. And you can click on that, and then it just shows that assignments tab in a different way without you going to the particular team. You may find that as a faster way to get to that stuff. I rarely actually use this tab. And then, of course, you have access to your calendar, calls, and you can add other apps to this particular side panel. So you can go and you can look at doing that, and you can pin them. For instance, you notice I have Stream and Zoom pinned, so you can go through, and this is another great way to look at all the apps that are available in Microsoft Teams that you may find interesting. Planner, for instance, is another one that you may find useful, as well as there's so many different things that you may want to check out. So I hope you found this useful getting started with Teams. If you needed a general overview of Microsoft Teams, this is definitely a great video for you. Ask me any questions you may have down in the comments section below. And don't forget to click that subscribe button so you can see more videos by me.